Welcome back to Language Arts with Dr. B, brought to you by Brooke LLC. Today's lesson is on colons and semicolons. If you missed the lesson on commas, I advise you to stop this presentation, go to the lesson on commas first. All right, so what is a colon? A colon is this thing right here. Two dots, one on top of the other. A colon can be used to introduce or draw attention to a list, noun, or quote, such as in the following examples. Please bring the following: notebook, pencil, and highlighters. Now, this particular sentence actually needs a couple of things. For one, it needs a colon for sure, and it also needs commas. So, where do our commas go? Well, we have items in a series, so our commas go here and here. Okay? But in this particular example, we have the introduction of a list because we have these items in the series, and that's a list. So please bring the following: colon, notebook, pencil, and highlighters. All right? That was pretty simple. Now, in the next example, we're drawing attention to a particular noun or noun phrase. Richard needed only two things: peace and quiet. So because we're introducing this noun, we're not just saying Richard needed peace and quiet. We're drawing special attention to it. He needed only two things: colon, peace, and quiet. And our last example in this section, everyone knows this famous quote: to be or not to be, that is the question. So, a challenge for you is to determine who said that quote. Do you know? All right. So, after you've looked for that, everyone knows this famous quote: colon, to be or not to be, that is the question. Okay, so that's pretty simple way to use the colon. Now, what you don't want to do when using colons is put a colon in places that seem like they're maybe introducing a list, perhaps, but it's really not. For example, if you have a sentence such as, please bring a notebook, pencil, and highlighters, well then in that case, we don't use a colon. So let me actually put that sentence on here so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so I've added this sentence right up here at the top. Please bring a notebook, pencil, and highlighters. It's very similar to the other sentence that we just talked about. However, in this one, we have a verb right in front of the list, and we cannot place a colon after a verb, nor can we place a colon after a preposition. Some examples of prepositions include things like to, around, of, beneath. Think about a rabbit and a tree. Anything that the rabbit can do with that tree would be a preposition. For example, the rabbit can go to the tree, around the tree, over the tree, under the tree, beneath the tree, beside the tree, with the tree. All of those words are prepositions. With, around, beneath, over, under. All of those are prepositions. So we don't put a colon after a preposition, and we don't put a colon after a verb. Okay? So keep that rule in mind. Now, another way that we use colons is to connect two sentences when the second sentence explains the first. Now, the second sentence may not always explain the first when you see a colon, but for the most part, that's a good rule of thumb. So here's an example. He knew one thing for sure: he was loved. That second sentence, he was loved, gives some more evidence or provides more detail about the first sentence. He knew one thing for sure, colon, he was loved. So this is two sentences where the second sentence gives more detail about the first. Okay? Now here are some other uses of the colon. So we have time. Let's move that up here. Of course, we all know units of time. Let's say that we're talking about 10:30 a.m. Okay? So we need to put the colon there to indicate that this is time. All right? Another example is ratios. So a ratio is simply something to something. So let's say 3 out of 5 or 3 to 5. Okay, so we have a colon there to indicate that ratio. Another way to use the colon is with scriptures. So, for example, we might have Matthew 25, chapter 25, verse 1. Okay, we have a colon there. Another way is subtitles. So a subtitle is simply when the author has written a main title and then they have a title that is secondary to that title. It's not the main title, but perhaps it explains more of that first title. But it is secondary. It is under that main title. So, for example, you might have something like fish. It's not letting me write. Okay, here we go. Fish in the lake. I know, something I made up. A study of aquatic life. Okay, so we have that colon there. And last example here is in a salutation. Now, if you watched the lesson on commas, you'll notice that I mentioned that we use commas after a salutation in a friendly letter or to someone that we're familiar with. Dear Mom, comma. Dear Mr. Smith, comma. If we know Mr. Smith personally, but we just call him Mr. Smith, then we can put Dear Mr. Smith, comma. Or if it's less formal, something informal, we can use a comma after that salutation. But if it's a business letter and we're not really familiar with the person that we're writing to, then we're going to use a colon. So we may say something like, Dear Dr. Man, colon. And that's it. So next we're going to talk about the semicolon. And this is the semicolon right here. A dot on top of a comma. Okay? Looks very similar to the colon, but it has a little piece of difference there. So one way that we use the semicolon is to separate two related sentences. For example, bananas are good for you. Some people put them in their cereal. So you could separate these two sentences with a period and it's fine. But if you don't want it to be short and choppy and you kind of want to tie them together a little better, then we can cross out that period and put a semicolon there. Now, when we do that, we also need to make this S lowercase. We need to put a little s. Sorry, it doesn't really look like a little s, but that's what that's supposed to be. Okay? So we put a semicolon there. Bananas are good for you, semicolon, little s, some people put them in their cereal. All right. Another way that we use the semicolon is to separate two related sentences with a conjunctive adverb. If you watched the lesson on commas, you'll see some examples of conjunctive adverbs, such as however, therefore, nevertheless, consequently, and so on and so forth. So in this particular case, we can do just like the sentence above, where you could put a period in the sentence and the sentence would be fine. But if you want to and you choose to keep going on with that one sentence, then we use a semicolon instead. So in this example, bananas are good for you. Therefore, some people put them in their cereal. Here is a conjunctive adverb, therefore, and we're going to drop a semicolon right here in front of it. Semicolon, therefore, comma. All of the conjunctive adverbs would look the same if they are used in this way. Okay? And then we have items in a series with commas. So, once again, if you've seen the comma lesson, then you'll know that we separate items in a series, basically a list, with commas. But sometimes those items in that list also have commas within them. And so to cut down on confusion, we use a semicolon to make the distinction between the items. For example, Marcus has lived in Maryland, California, and Texas. That sentence is fine as it is. We have items, we have a list, and they're separated with commas. That's all we need to do. In the second sentence, however, the items themselves have commas. Marcus has lived in Baltimore, Maryland, Sacramento, California, and Houston, Texas. So normally we will put a comma between the items in the series. However, since they already have these commas here, we missed a comma right there. But since they already have those commas, we're going to make these other commas be semicolons. So we're going to correct these. We're going to put semicolon here, and we're going to put a semicolon there. Okay? If you have any questions at any time, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me, and I'll put my contact information on the last slide so that if you want to have a conversation, if you want more lessons about any of the grammar rules that we've talked about, any of the reading concepts, if you want to see a lesson that you haven't seen in my repository so far, then please just let me know and we can make it happen. So here is a little semicolon quiz for you. I want you to copy this passage on your own paper, or you can actually take a screenshot of this. And if you have a cell phone or an iPad that you can mark on, you can actually take the screenshot and mark on it by editing your picture. So you may not want to write all this down, but hey, we have to do some kind of work, some kind of way. So if you can't take a screenshot, just pause this presentation and copy down this passage. Once you copy it down, please make your corrections and I'll come back with the answers. Okay, hopefully you didn't cheat. So let's see what you have here. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. When I wake up in the morning, I gather the following ingredients: eggs, bread, and cinnamon sugar. French toast is my favorite. I'm sure at least 9 out of 10 people would agree. I know one thing for sure. I love breakfast. Now, if you put a semicolon right here, that's okay as well, because technically it can be either or. Juicy, ripe apples, sweet, tangy orange juice, and thick grits are just what I need to help get my morning going. We need some semicolons here. Juicy, ripe apples, because we have items in a series here, and these items already have commas. Sweet, tangy orange juice, semicolon. Okay? I believe my mom said it best, colon. You need a good, hearty something in your belly to start your day just right. I agree, semicolon. Therefore, I heed her sage advice. All right. So, I think that was easy. Do you think it was easy? Are you still having issues with colons and semicolons? If so, let me know by visiting us at docubrook.weebly.com, or you can email me at docubrook@yahoo.com. Until next time, thank you. Have a great one.